Hmm. Okay. Digestive system. Food energy providers, carbohydrate, protein, fat have calorific value. Vitamins and minerals non-calorific value but important. Vitamin mineral have no calorific value. Food source of energy for growth and repair of tissue. Water plays an important role in metabolism. Biomolecules are not utilized as by body. So digestion is needed. Digestion macromolecules broken down and converted into simple substances. Conversion of complex food substances into absorbable forms carried out by our digestive system by mechanical and biochemical methods. Digestion is hydrolysis of food carried out by digestion by mechanical and biochemical methods. Mechanical and biochemical method. Digestion is human is extracellular. Human by digestion. It is small blind sac which holds symbiotic microorganism of vestigial organ that is vermiform appendix arises accident. कहाँ से? The basic requirement of all living beings food. The major components of food are carb, fat, protein. Vitamin, mineral, water are also required but in small quantities. Digestion is the process in which complex food substances are broken down and converted into simpler forms through hydrolysis, then absorbed by mechanical and biochemical. Methods of the digestive system. Human digestive system consists of alimentary canal and digestive glands. Alimentary canal, the anterior opening of the alimentary canal is the mouth and the posterior opening is the anus. Alimentary canal consists of different structures which are described below. Oral cavity is the cavity which opens through mouth and contains teeth and muscular tongue. Teeth are for grasping and mastication of food. In humans, these are described as follows. Thecodont, each tooth is embedded in a socket of jawbone. Diphyodont, as two set of teeth appear during life. Milk or dioecious teeth and permanent. Milk को ही dioecious कहते हैं. Middle teeth और dioecious deciduous teeth. Sorry, दोनों एक ही चीज़ है. मिल्क और deciduous एक चीज़ है. आगे heterodont has different types of teeth present. Incisor, canine, premolar, molar. 2123 by 2123 mature human adult का 2123 by 2123. Tongue is a muscular movable organ attached to the flora of the buccal cavity through an attachment called frenulum. Tongue attachment called frenulum. Frenulum. A small projection called papillae are present all over the surface of the tongue. Some of the papillae bear taste bud. Some of the papillae bear taste bud. Some of the papillae bear taste bud, not all. Pharynx, the buccal cavity or oral cavity is followed by pharynx through which sources the common passage for food and air is pharynx. Of course. During swallowing, the entry of food into opening of the windpipe, that is glottis, is prevented by epiglottis. Esophagus is a thin and long tube which opens into a J-shaped structure, that is stomach, and this opening is regulated by gastroesophageal sphincter. Stomach, it is located in the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity. Four major parts: cardiac, fundic, body, pyloric. Cardiac, fundic, body, pyloric. The cardiac portion receives the opening of esophagus, whereas the pyloric portion opens into the duodenum, the first part of the intestine. कार्डियक रिसीव करता है और पाइलोरिक देता है. कार्डियक फर्स्ट पार्ट है और पाइलोरिक लास्ट. कार्डियक इज द फर्स्ट एंड पाइलोरिक इज द लास्ट. खैर एनीवेज आगे small intestine, it has three regions: C-shaped duodenum, middle jejunum and highly coiled ileum which opens into the large intestine. Large intestine, it has a shorter length than in small intestine, but it is called as large because it has a wider in diameter than small intestine. It consists of following parts: cecum, colon, rectum. Cecum, it is a small blind sac which hosts symbiotic microorganism. A vestigial organ, that is vermiform appendix, arises from it. Colon, it is divided into ascending, transverse, descending, and sigmoid parts. Ascending, transverse, descending, and sigmoid parts. Rectum, it is the end portion of colon which opens into the anus. And portion of the colon which opens in loose connective tissue containing nerve, blood, lymph vessels, and in some areas glands. Mucosa, it is the innermost lining which forms irregular folds, rugae in stomach, and small finger-like foldings, villi in small intestine. रूगी विलाई सब यही है म्यूकोसा अंदर का सबसे ज़्यादा क्या रहा है. The cells lining the villi produce irregular. The cells The cells lining the villi produce macrovilli which increase the surface area of small intestine. Villi of small intestine are supplied by capillaries and a large lymph vessel, lacteal. Villi of small intestine are supplied by capillary vessels called lacteal. Mucosa possesses mucus secreting goblet cell and crypts of ligable cocoon in intestine. Digestive glands. Digestive glands associated with the alimentary canal are as follows: salivary glands, liver, gastric gland, pancreas. Salivary glands. In humans, these are present in three pairs: the parotids, cheek, submaxillary, submandibular, lower jaw, sublingual, below the tongue. पैरोटिड हो गया चीक, सबमैक्सिलरी सबमैंडिबुलरी हो गया लोअर जो, और सबलिंगुअल हो गया बिलो द टंग, which secrete and pour salivary juices into the buccal cavity. Liver, it is the largest gland of the body, weighing 8.2 से 1.5 kilogram in a human adult, located in the upper right section of the abdominal cavity. Divided into two lobes, that is right and left lobe, separated by falciparum ligament. Each lobe is further divided into hepatic lobules. Hepatic lobules are the structural and functional units of liver containing hepatic cells arranged in the form of cords. Each globule is covered by thin connective tissue sheath called Gleason's capsule. Each hepatic lobules are structural and functional units. Each lobule is covered by the Gleason's capsule. Thin connective tissue sheath called the Gleason's capsule. The bile secreted by the hepatic cells passes through the hepatic duct and is stored in gallbladder. The bile secreted by the hepatic cells passes through the hepatic ducts and is stored in the gallbladder. The bile duct and the pancreatic duct open together into the duodenum. Bile duct and the pancreatic duct open together into the duodenum as the common hepatopancreatic duct, which is guarded by a sphincter called sphincter of Oddi. Gastric glands. These are microscopic tubular glands formed by the epithelium of the stomach. These contain chief cells, oxyntic cells, mucous cells, and endocrine gland cells, yani G cells, and Argentefin cells. These cells contain chief, oxyntic, mucous, and endocrine cells. Pancreas, it is a compound organ containing both exocrine The C-shaped pancreatic between the C-shaped duodenum. The exocrine part secretes an alkaline pancreatic juice containing enzymes, and the endocrine part secretes hormone, that is insulin and glucagon. Secretes hormone, that is insulin and glucagon. और एक्सोक्राइन क्या करता है? इंसुलिन ग्लूकागॉन. एक्सोक्राइन करता है पैनक्रियाटिक जूस. एक्सोक्राइन पार्ट secrete an alkaline. Pancreatic juice is alkaline. Pancreatic juice is alkaline. The endocrine secretes hormone, insulin and glucagon. Endocrine part insulin, glucagon. Again, digestion of food. It occurs by mechanical and chemical processes in various organs, which are as follows. Buccal cavity. Food is masticated and mixed with mucus and saliva in the form bolus. It is passed down to the pharynx and esophagus by deglutition, निगलना. Chemical processing of food in buccal cavity. Salivary amylase present in salivary hydrolyzes carboxylase into disaccharides at pH 6.8. Lysozyme in saliva is an active bacterial agent which prevents infection. Lysozyme in saliva is an active bacterial agent which prevents infection. The food passes down through the esophagus by peristalsis into the stomach. Stomach food is mixed with gastric acid by churning movement of the muscular walls so as to form chyme. बोलस था फिर काइम बन गया. इसोफेगस से कुछ नहीं, बस अंदर तक आया. Chemical processing of food in stomach. It can be summarized as pepsinogen proenzyme. पेप्सिल डाल दें तो पेप्सिन बन जाता है जो कि एक्टिव है. And pepsin act on protein to form proteases and peptones. Role of other chemical substances in the stomach are tabulated as follows. Mucus and bicarbonates lubricate, protect mucosal epithelium from the excoriation by HCl. HCl provide acidic pH 1.8 which is optimal for pepsin. Renin, RENIN है तो helps in digestion of milk proteins in infants. ओके. अरे ये वो वाला है क्या? प्रेशर वाला. हाँ, प्रेशर वाला ये तो. लो प्रेशर पर एकदम पतला और हाई प्रेशर पर ज़्यादा गाढ़ा. ओके. I'll change it to the normal one. Done. High, low, same all time. Anyways, renin helps in the digestion of protein in infants. Lipase converts triglyceride into diglyceride. अच्छा definition use करा यार. Lipase क्या करता है? Converts triglyceride into diglyceride. Cecum is the small bland cell which holds symbiotic organisms or vestigial organ that is vermivore. Appendix rises from it. Colon, it is ascending, transfer descending in sigmoid colon. Anyways, आगे rectum, cecum, colon, rectum. आगे the wall of alimentary canals from esophagus to rectum possesses four layers: serosa, muscularis, submucosa, mucosa. Serosa is a thin mesothelium and some connective tissue. Muscularis formed by smooth muscle syringes. Inner circular, outer longitudinal. याद कैसे होगा? Inner circular, outer longitudinal. ICOL, ICOL. Inner circular, outer longitudinal. ICOL, ICOL. ICOL. Oblique muscles may be found in the muscularis of some regions. Submucosa found by loose connective tissue containing nerve, blood, some regions even glands. Mucosa innermost villi, rugae in stomach or villi in small intestine. Fold rugae in stomach, villi in small intestine. Cells lining the villi produce microvilli which increases the surface area of the small intestine. Villi of small intestine is supplied by the capillaries and a large lymph called lacteal. Mucosa possesses mucus-secreting goblet cells, crypts of Lieberkühn in the intestine. Mucosa possesses mucus-secreting goblet cells, crypts of Lieberkühn in intestine, digestive glands, salivary glands, liver, gastric gland, and pancreas. Salivary glands in human, these are present in three pairs, that is parotid, चीक में हो गया, सब मैक्सिलरी सब मैंडिबुलर लोअर जो, सब लिंगुअल हो गया बिलो द टंग, सब लिंगुअल हो गया बिलो द टंग, लिंगुअल लिंगल लिंग्विस्टिक्स यानी टंग, जीभ जुबान, सब लिंगुअल सब मैक्सिलरी सब मैंडिबुलर हो गया लोअर जो, और पैरोटिड हो गया चिक। ठीक है, 3 pairs. Liver 1.2 to 1.5 kilogram in adult human located in the upper right section of the abdominal cavity. It is divided into two lobes, that is right and left lobes, separated by falciparum ligament. Each lobe is further divided into hepatic lobules. Each lobe is further divided into hepatic lobules. Hepatic lobules are structural and functional units of liver containing hepatic cells in the form of cords. Each lobule is covered by a thin connective tissue called Glasnost capsule. Each lobule is covered by thin connective tissue sheath called Glasnost capsule. Bile secreted by the hepatic cells passes through the hepatic ducts and is stored in the gallbladder. The bile duct and the pancreatic duct open together into the duodenum as the common hepatic duct, which is covered by the sphincter called sphincter of Oddi. Bile secreted by the hepatic cell pass through the hepatic duct and stored in gallbladder. And then bile duct and pancreatic duct, जो bile में store हुआ bile जो gallbladder में, उसका duct bile duct and the pancreatic duct open together into duodenum as the common hepatopancreatic duct, which is guarded by the sphincter of Oddi. एक ही sphincter याद करना है, sphincter of Oddi जो कि duodenum के पहले आता है और उसको connect करता है दोनों को. Gastric glands, these are microscopic tubular glands formed by the epithelium of the stomach. Contain chief cell, oxyntic cell, mucous cell and endocrine cell. G cell and argentifin cell है endocrine. कौन कौन सेल? चीफ, ऑक्जेंटिक, म्यूकस और एंडोक्राइन सेल यानी जी सेल, अर्जेंटिफिन सेल. खैर इसका ज़्यादा कोई यूज़ नहीं अभी. Pancreas, it is compound organ containing both exocrine and endocrine parts, situated between the C-shaped duodenum. The exocrine part secretes an alkaline pancreatic juice containing enzymes, and endocrine part secretes hormone, that is insulin and glucagon. Digestion of food. It occurs by mechanical and chemical processes in various organs, which are as follows. Buccal cavity, food is masticated and mixed with mucus and saliva to form bolus. It is passed down the pharynx and esophagus by deglutition. Chemical processing of food in buccal cavity. Salivary amylase presents in the salivary hydrolyzes carbohydrates. Example, starch into disaccharide. Example, maltose at the pH 6.8. Lysozyme in saliva is an active bacterial agent which prevents infections. The food passes down through the esophagus by peristalsis into the stomach. Stomach में food is mixed with the acidic gastric juices by churning movements of muscular walls so as to form the chyme. Food is mixed with acidic gastric juice by churning movements of the muscular wall so as to form chyme. For chemical processing of food in the stomach, पेप्सिनोजन में छेड़ डालने से पेप्सिन बनता है जो कि एक्टिव हो जाता है, और पेप्सिनोजन इज नथिंग बट अ प्रोएंजाइम. और फिर पेप्सिन जो है जो कि एक्टिव होता है, it acts on the proteins to form proteases and peptones. Role of other chemicals in stomach are labelated as below. Mucus and bicarbonates lubricate and protect the mucosal epithelium from excoriation by HCl. HCl provides acidic pH 1.8, which is optimal for pepsin. Renin helps in the digestion of milk proteins in the infants. Lipase converts triglycerides into diglycerides. Anyways, moving ahead, small intestine में क्या होता है? स्टमक में कुछ तो हुआ नहीं, डाइग्लिसराइड बना और तो कुछ नहीं बना. HCl थोड़ा मोड़ा काम किया पेप्सिन के लिए, और म्यूकस और बाइकार्बोनेट बचाता है लेयर को. कॉमन हेपेटिक डक्ट डुओडेनम से तब मिलता है जब स्फिंक्टर ऑफ ओडाई होता है. Small intestine exhibits various movements which help in the mixing up of food and intestinal secretions like pancreatic juice Bile and intestinal juice. Pancreatic juice, bile, intestinal juice. Now, pancreatic juice contains inactive enzymes like trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, lipases, nucleases, amylases, and procarboxypeptidase. Procarboxypeptidase, amylase. Nucleases, lipases. Chymotrypsinogen or एक trypsinogen. All pancreatic enzymes are activated by trypsin, which itself is activated form of trypsinogen. ट्रिप्सिनोजन से इंट्रोकाइनेज बनता है, ट्रिप्सिनोजन पे इंट्रोकाइनेज लगता है, फिर ट्रिप्सिन बनता है. ट्रिप्सिन कैसे बनता है? इंट्रोकाइनेज से. ट्रिप्सिन बनता है ट्रिप्सिनोजन से विद द हेल्प ऑफ इंट्रोकाइनेज. एनीवेज, फिर ट्रिप्सिन जाके सबको एक्टिवेट कर देता है. यही था कहानी. ट्रिप्सिन सबको एक्टिवेट करता है और ट्रिप्सिन खुद ट्रिप्सिनोजन से एक्टिवेट होता है इंट्रोकाइनेज के हेल्प से. ठीक है, आगे. बाइल जूस. बाइल कंटेन पिगमेंट्स बिलीरुबिन एंड बिलीवर्डिन. बाइल सॉर्ट्स कोलेस्ट्रॉल एंड फॉस्फोलिपिड बट डज नॉट कंटेन एनी एंजाइम. कोई एंजाइम नहीं होता बाइल में. इट हेल्प्स इन द इमल्सिफिकेशन ऑफ फैट्स एंड एक्टिवेशन ऑफ लाइपेजेस. इमल्सिफिकेशन ऑफ फैट्स तो पता है, और इसके साथ साथ एक्टिवेशन ऑफ लाइपेजेस. It helps in the emulsification of fats and the activation of lipases. Intestinal juice or succus entericus. Entericus is formed by the secretions of the brush border cells of mucosa and goblet cells. Intestinal juice or succus entericus is formed by the secretions of brush border cells of mucosa and goblet cells. It contains enzymes like lipases, dipeptidases, disaccharides, and nucleosidases, etc. Intestinal juice succus entericus is formed by the brush border cells of mucosa and goblet cells. Lipases, dipases, saccharides, and nucleosides, etc. Mucous bicarbonates and submucosal glands, Brunner's gland, protect the intestinal mucosa and provide alkaline pH for enzymatic activities. तो intestinal juice तो बहुत कुछ कर दिया. Intestinal juice formed by secretion of brush border cells of mucosa and goblet cell. Mucosa or goblet cells contains enzymes like lipases, dipeptidases, disaccharides, nucleosidases. Lipase, dipeptidase, disaccharidases and nucleosidases. तो ऑल इन ऑल सब कुछ है इसमें. म्यूकस बाइकार्बोनेट्स एंड सबम्यूकोसल यानी ब्रूनर्स ग्लैंड प्रोटेक्ट द इंटेस्टाइनल म्यूकोसा एंड प्रोवाइड अल्कालाइन पीएच. तो ब्रूनर ग्लैंड प्रोटेक्ट्स द इंटेस्टाइनल म्यूकोसा और ऑब्लिक मसल लेयर स्टमक में होता है. खैर जो भी हो, म्यूकोसा लेयर में होता है ज़्यादातर ग्लैंड्स. क्या बोल कह रहा है? सब म्यूकोसल एंड बाइकार्बोनेट. सब म्यूकोसल ग्लैंड है. ब्रूनर ग्लैंड इज अ सब म्यूकोसल ग्लैंड इवन दो मास मेजॉरिटी आर. सब म्यूकोसा में ग्लैंड होता है. सॉरी, म्यूकोसा में ग्लैंड नहीं होता, सब म्यूकोसा में ही ग्लैंड होता है. Glands are present in the submucosal layer. तो ब्रूनर ग्लैंड भी ऑफ कोर्स सबम्यूकोसल ग्लैंड होगा इंटेस्टाइन में. इंटेस्टाइनल जूस के कारण फिर प्रोटेक्ट द इंटेस्टाइनल म्यूकोसा एंड प्रोवाइड अल्कलाइन पीएच फॉर सम एंजाइमेटिक एक्टिविटीज. मेजर एंजाइम्स इन्वॉल्व इन द डाइजेशन ऑफ कार्ब्स, प्रोटीन्स, फैट्स और न्यूक्लिक एसिड्स. सबसे पहले आ गया सबस्ट्रेट यानी फूड और मेन ब्रेकडाउन प्रोडक्ट एंजाइम साइट ऑफ एक्शन. कार्बोहाइड्रेट का डाइजेशन माउथ में होता है, पॉलीसैकेराइड से डाइसैकेराइड. स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में पैंक्रियास के कारण होता है, पैंक्रियाटिक अमाइलेज के कारण. माउथ में होता है सलाइवरी अमाइलेज के कारण. स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में होता है पैंक्रियाटिक अमाइलेज के कारण. और स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में एक और चीज़ होता है उसका फर्दर ऑन डिकम्पोजिशन, यानी कि डाइसैकेराइड से मोनोसैकेराइड भी यहीं बनता है। ओके, माल्टेज माल्टोज पे काम करके ग्लूकोज बना देगा, समझ गया। प्रोटीन डाइजेशन, स्टमक म्यूकोसा में पेप्सिन, प्रोटीन से बन जाएगा पेप्टाइड फ्रैगमेंट, यानी प्रोटोन्स और प्रोटीएजेस एंड पेप्टोन्स बन जाता है। प्रोटीओजेस एंड पेप्टोन्स, जब पेप्सिन काम करता है प्रोटीन पे। स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में ट्रिप्सिन एंड काइमोट्रिप्सिन ऐड करता है, फिर से वही चीज़ होता है। और फिर स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में पैनक्रियाज भी देता है अपने तरफ से कार्बोक्सीपेप्टाइडेजेस, और वो भी वही चीज़ करता है, लेकिन ये पेप्टोन्स और प्रोटीएजेस को अमाइनो एसिड में बदल देता है, कार्बोक्सीपेप्टाइडेज, ये इंपॉर्टेंट है। और एक और चीज़ होता है यहाँ पे अमाइनो पेप्टाइडेजेस, तो ये दोनों इंपॉर्टेंट हो गया, कार्बोक्सीपेप्टाइडेजेस एंड अमाइनो पेप्टाइडेजेस। स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में पैनक्रियाज के कारण, स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में पैनक्रियासिस के कारण कार्बोक्सीपेप्टाइडेज, इंटेस्टाइनल म्यूकोसा के कारण अमाइनो पेप्टाइडेज। खैर आगे चलते हैं। स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में पैनक्रियाज के कारण ट्रिप्सिन काइमोट्रिप्सिन, और ट्रिप्सिन काइमोट्रिप्सिन के कारण बना अपना प्रोटीन प्रोटीएजेस, उससे बना अमाइनो एसिड कार्बोक्सीपेप्टाइडेज के कारण। कार्बोक्सीपेप्टाइडेज की तरह अमाइनो पेप्टाइडेज भी होता है, सब स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में, और स्टमक में बस पेप्सिन होता है, बस, जो कि सिर्फ प्रोटोन्स और पेप्सिन वाला, वही पेप्सिनोजन से पेप्सिन वाला। फैट डाइजेशन स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में पैनक्रियाज होता है, ओके, और उसके कारण लाइपेज आता है, बस लाइपेज ट्राइग्लिसराइड को फ्री फैटी एसिड्स एंड मोनोग्लिसराइड में कन्वर्ट कर देता है, ये तो पढ़ चुके हैं, सिर्फ स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में। और आगे न्यूक्लिक एसिड, ये भी सिर्फ स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन में ऑफ कोर्स। पैनक्रियाज यानी पैनक्रियाटिक न्यूक्लियसेस, और फिर इंटेस्टाइनल म्यूकोसा के कारण भी इंटेस्टाइनल न्यूक्लियसेस। पैनक्रियाज और इंटेस्टाइनल दोनों के न्यूक्लियसेस अलग अलग काम करते हैं, डीएनए आरएनए से न्यूक्लियोटाइड बना देते हैं, डीएनएज या फिर आरएनएज के चलते, जो कि पैनक्रियाज करता है। डीएनएज और आरएनएज ये दोनों पैनक्रियाज करेगा, और इंटेस्टाइनल म्यूकोसा क्या करेगा, न्यूक्लियोटाइडेज, जो पैनक्रियाज से हुआ न्यूक्लियोटाइड बना, उसको फिर जा करके बेसेस और मोनोसेकेराइड नंबर तोड़ेगा इंटेस्टाइन वाला। और न्यूक्लिक एसिड वाला टफ था थोड़ा, बाकी इजी था। प्रोटीन डाइजेशन भी इजी ही था मिला जुला के। अमाइनो पेप्टाइडेजेस इंटेस्टाइनल म्यूकोसा करता है, और न्यूक्लियोटाइडेजेस भी इंटेस्टाइनल म्यूकोसा ही करता है, बाकी सब पैनक्रियाज। The simple substances are absorbed in the jejunum and ileum. Jejunum, ileum, duodenum, jejunum, ileum. ऐसा क्या? The undigested food are passed through the large intestine. Large absorption of hormones, certain drugs occur. Mucus is secreted to adhere the waste particles together and lubricate it for easy passage. Fecal matter enters into the cecum through the ileocecal valve and is then defecated through the anus. Regulation and digestion process. The activities of the gastrointestinal tract are under neural and hormonal control. Salivary, gastric, and intestinal secretions are stimulated by neural signals. Salivary, gastric, and intestinal secretions are stimulated by neural signals. The muscular activities of different parts of alimentary canal are also moderated by neural mechanism, both local and through CNS. The muscular activities of the different parts of the alimentary canal are also moderated by the neurochemicals of the local and through CNS. Local hormones produced by the gastric and intestinal mucosa further control the secretion of digestive juices. Local hormones produced by the gastric and intestinal mucosa further control the secretion of the digestive juices. काफ़ी इन्फ्लुएंशियल लोग हैं. Anyways, the muscular vector neuron work both local and through CNS. Calorific fuel value, amount of energy liberated due to composition of 1 gram of food, measured in Bob calometer, a closed metal chamber filled with O2. For carbs, gross energy per gram calorific value is 4.1, fats 9.45, proteins 5.65 calorie per gram. तो वही है carb, then protein, and lastly fat. According to these different value of calorific values of different nutrients, fats have the highest calorific value. Okay. Absorption of the digested food. Absorption is the process which ends the product of digestion pass through the intestinal mucosa into the blood or lymph. Various mechanisms by which absorption occurs have been tabulated below. Simple diffusion, monosaccharide या फिर ग्लूकोज, अमाइनो एसिड, इलेक्ट्रोलाइट, क्लोराइड आयंस. क्लोराइड आयंस याद रखना. फैसिलिटेड ट्रांसपोर्ट ग्लूकोज एंड अमीनो एसिड. बहुत पूछता यार. फैसिलिटेड ट्रांसपोर्ट ग्लूकोज एंड अमीनो एसिड्स. एनीवेज आगे. ऑस्मोसिस, वाटर एक्टिव हो गया ग्लूकोज, सोडियम. अरे यार ये एक बार का नहीं होता क्या? ग्लूकोज, सोडियम आयन एंड अमीनो एसिड. तो सोडियम आयन को छोड़ के एक्टिव ट्रांसपोर्ट से जो भी होता है वो फैसिलिटेटेड ट्रांसपोर्ट भी होता है. आगे क्लोराइड आयन, सिंपल डिफ्यूजन. फैटी एसिड्स and cholesterol are absorbed, being incorporated into muscles, which are referred to into small protein coated chylomicrons and are transported into the lacteals of the villi. तो lacteals of the villi से होता है और होता है इन मिसल्स में घुस जाता है, जिसको कहते हैं स्मॉल प्रोटीन कोटेड chylomicrons. chylomicrons कुछ नहीं है, स्मॉल है और प्रोटीन कोटेड है. और ये क्या है? बेसिकली ग्लिसरॉल और फैटी एसिड है जो कि मिसल में बन जाता है और उसके बाद प्रोटीन से घिर जाता है. Fatty acid and glycerol are absorbed after being incorporated into micelles, and those micelles are basically reformed into small protein-coated chylomicrons and are trapped into lacteals of the villi, और फिर वहाँ से जाता है. Anyway, summary of absorption is different parts of the digestive system. Mouth, certain drugs coming into the contact with the mucosa of the mouth and lower side of the tongue are absorbed in the blood capillaries lining them. Certain drugs and mucosa of the mouth में जो आते हैं, lower side of the tongue. सब mucosa में ब्रूनर ग्लैंड है और oblique muscle layer muscularis में है. ठीक है. Mouth, certain drugs coming in the contact of the mucosa of the mouth and lower side of the tongue are absorbed into the blood capillaries lining them. Stomach, absorption of water, sugar, alcohol, etc. take place. Small intestine is the principal organ for the absorption of nutrients. The digestion of completed here and final products of the digestion such as glucose, fructose, fatty acid, cholesterol and amino acid absorbed through the mucosa into the blood and stream lymph. Large intestine absorption of water, some mineral and drugs take place, just like mouth but a bit less. Water, mineral, drugs. और माउथ में certain drug बस ड्रग होता है माउथ में. लार्ज इंटेस्टाइन में वाटर, मिनरल, ड्रग. और स्टमक में अब्जॉर्प्शन ऑफ वाटर, सिंपल, शुगर एंड अल्कोहल. इसीलिए चखना खा जाता है ताकि देर तक हो जो भी है. The absorbed finest substances finally reach the tissues where the nutrients are to be utilized, and this process is called assimilation. The digestive waste gets solidified into the rectum and is digested outside of the anal by the mass peristaltic movement. Disorder of the digestive system. These are divided into the following types. Number 1, protein energy malnutrition, PEM. क्वाशियोरकर usually observed in the children of the age group 1 to 5 years. मरासमस मतलब मरा हुआ इन्फेंट में 1 year से कम में मरासमस. Impaired growth and replacement of tissue, thin limbs and prominent ribs, very less fat on the body, wrinkle यानी dry skin, diarrhea. और क्वाशियोरकर में symptoms include thin limbs, retarded growth of body and brain, swelling of the leg due to retention of the water यानी edema, reddish hair, pot belly, diarrhea दोनों को होता है. जो भी है jaundice. Also known as icterus, it is the yellowing on the skin, muscular mucosa membranes and the eyes. This happens due to abnormal functioning of the liver, which causes accumulation of excessive quantity of bilirubin in the blood, yani bile salts, bilirubin, biliverdin. Vomiting, ejection of stomach content through the mouth, controlled by the vomit center in the medulla. Vomit center कहाँ पे होता है? Medulla में होता है. Vomit center is found in medulla. Diarrhea, abnormal frequency of the bowel movement with the increased liquidity of fecal discharge that reduces the absorption of food. Constipation, retention of feces in the rectum with irregular bowel movement. Indigestion, improper digestion of food leading to the fullness caused due to inadequate enzyme secretion, anxiety, food poisoning, overeating, etc. Anyways, आगे breathing and exchange of gases. Respiration is an oxidative process involving the oxidation of food substances such as carbs, proteins, fats within the tissue to form CO2, water, and consequent release of energy. इसको कहते हैं respiration. Respiratory system provides the route by which the oxygen present in the environment gains energy into the blood, into the body, and CO2 is excreted. This whole process of exchange of gases is called breathing. Respiratory organs. Different animal groups have evolved different mechanisms of breathing for exchange of the gases. Lower animals like sponges, cnidarians, platyhelminthes, and free-living roundworms exchange O2 by simple diffusion through the body surface. Lower animals like sponges, cnidarians, by the simple diffusion through the body surface. Earthworms respire through the moist cuticle, and insects have a network of tubes, tracheal tubes, to transform atmospheric air within the body. Earthworms respire through moist cuticle, and insects have a network of tubes, yani tracheal tubes, to transport atmospheric air within the body. Earthworms respire through the moist cuticle. Earthworms respire through the moist cuticle, and insects have a network of tracheal tubes. Specialized vascular tissues called gills. Branchial respiration are used by most of the aquatic arthropods and mollusks. Mollusks. Specialized vascular tissue structures called gills, bronchial respiration, are used by most of the aquatic arthropods and mollusks. The highly vascularized bags called lung pulmonary respiration are used by the terrestrial forms of exchange of gases, reptile, bird, mammal. Amphibian and frog respire through the skin, cutaneous as well as lung. क्या क्या है? Lower animal like sponges, cnidarian, platypus, mantis, and some roundworms, free-living roundworms, change automatic the simple diffusion. Earthworms have tracheal tubes. Insects, earthworms respire through the cuticle. Insects form a network of tubes. These basically tracheal tubes to transfer the atmospheric air within the body. Special vascularized structures called gills and bronchial respiration are used by most of the aquatic arthropods and mollusks. Highly vascularized plaques called lungs and pulmonary respiration are used for the terrestrial forms of the exchange of gases, reptile, bird, mammal. Pulmonary respiration, cutaneous respiration, bronchial respiration, tracheal respiration. Tracheal हो गया इंसेक्ट में, ब्रैंकियल हो गया गिल्स, आर्थ्रोपोड एंड मोलस्क्स आगे, पल्मोनरी तो लंग हो गया, और क्यूटेनियस हो गया फ्रॉग में. Earthworm cuticle और cutaneous respiration amphibian यानी frog. Important confusion हो सकता है. Anyways, आगे चलते हैं. Human respiratory system. Pharynx is the common passage of food and air. Larynx, cartilaginous sound box which helps in the sound production. Pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, alveoli, lungs. सबसे पहले pharynx, common passage for food and air. Pharynx. Larynx, cartilaginous sound box which helps in the sound production. Entry of food into the larynx during the swallowing is prevented by the epiglottis. Entry of food into the larynx during swallowing is prevented by epiglottis. To the larynx during swallowing. It is a thin cartilaginous flap which covers the entry of food into the larynx during swallowing is prevented by epiglottis. It is a thin cartilaginous flap which covers the glottis of larynx. Pharynx opens into it through the larynx region. Straight tube extending up to the mid-thoracic cavity. Bifurcates at the level of fifth thoracic vertebra. Bifurcates at the level of fifth thoracic vertebra. You get trachea. Bronchi. Two in number undergo repeated divisions to form secondary, tertiary bronchi and terminal bronchioles. These are formed by the bifurcation of the trachea. Bronchi. Two in number undergo repeated division to form secondary, tertiary bronchi and terminal bronchioles. These are formed by the bifurcation of trachea. Alveoli, thin irregular walled vascularized bag-like structure at the terminal ends of bronchioles. Irregular walled होता है alveoli. Irregular walled vascularized bag-like structure at the terminal. Lungs constitute the branching network of bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli, covered by double-layered pleura with pleural fluid in between them. Airtight chamber formed by dorsally by vertebral column, ventrally by sternum, laterally by the ribs, and lower side diaphragm is present. The human respiratory system consists of two parts, that is, conducting and exchanging portions. The former helps to transport atmospheric air into the alveoli, cleaning and humidifying Respiration is an oxidative process involving the oxidation of food substances such as carbohydrates, fats, and proteins within the tissues to form CO2, water, and consequent release of energy. The respiratory system provides the route by which the oxygen present in our environment gains entry into the body and CO2 is excreted. This whole process of exchange of gases is called breathing. Respiratory organs. Different animal groups have evolved different mechanisms of breathing for exchange of gases. Lower animals like sponges, cnidarians, platyhelminthes, and free-living roundworms exchange O2 by simple diffusion through body surface. Earthworms respire through the most cortical, and insects have a network of tubes to transport atmospheric air within the body. Some special vascularized structures called gills, yani branchial respiration, are used by most of the aquatic arthropods and mollusks. The highly vascularized bags called lungs, pulmonary respiration, are used by terrestrial forms for exchange of gases. Example: reptile, bird, mammal. Amphibian yani frog respire through their skin yani cutaneous respiration as well as lungs. Pharynx, common passage for food and air. Larynx, cartilaginous sound box which helps in the sound production. Entry of food into the larynx during swallowing is prevented by epiglottis. It is a thin cartilaginous flap which covers the glottis of larynx. Epiglottis is basically a thin cartilaginous flap which covers the glottis of larynx. Trachea. Pharynx opens into it through the larynx region. Straight tube extending up to the mid-thoracic cavity. Bifurcates at the level of thoracic vertebra. Two in number undergo repeated division to form secondary, tertiary bronchi and terminal bronchioles. They are formed by the bifurcation of trachea. तो ट्रैकिया जब टूटता है फिफ्थ थोरैसिक वर्टिब्रा के लेवल पे तो ब्रोंकियाई बनता है. Alveoli thin irregular walled vascularized bag-like structure at the terminal ends are the bronchioles. Lungs हो गया constitute branching network of the bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli, covered by double layered pleura with pleural fluid between them. Airtight chamber formed by dorsal by vertebral column, ventrally by sternum and laterally by ribs on the lower side. Diaphragm is present. Human respiratory system consists of two parts, that is conducting and exchanging portions. The former parts helps to transport and cleaning and humidifying. यानी conducting का बात हो रहा है. तो earthworm हो गया moist cuticle और इंसेक्ट हो गया ट्रैकियल ट्यूब्स. पल्मोनरी रेस्पिरेशन हो गया ह्यूमन मतलब मैमल, रेप्टाइल और बर्ड्स. और फिर आ गया क्यूटेनियस रेस्पिरेशन एम्फीबियन सच एज फ्रॉग. और सिंपल डिफ्यूजन से आ गया सम राउंड वर्म मतलब फ्री लिविंग राउंड वर्म, प्लैटिहेल्मिंथेस और थोड़ा मोड़ा नाइडेरियन स्पंजेस. तो स्पंजेस, नाइडेरियन, प्लैटिहेल्मिंथेस और अपना फ्री लिविंग राउंड वर्म्स. सिंपल एक्सचेंज डिफ्यूजन. फिर आ गया अर्थवर्म मॉइस्ट क्यूटिकल. फिर आ गया फ्रॉग क्यूटेनियस यानी स्किन से और लंग से भी. फिर आ गया गिल्स वाला. तो गिल्स का गया ब्रैंकियल रेस्पिरेशन, मोलस्क एंड एक्वेटिक आर्थ्रोपोड्स. फिर से एक बार, गिल यानी ब्रैंकियल, लंग यानी पल्मोनरी, स्किन यानी क्यूटेनियस. स्किन क्यूटेनियस रेस्पिरेशन का हो गया फ्रॉग एम्फीबियन, लंग से भी करते हैं फ्रॉग्स. और फिर आ गया पल्मोनरी, उसमें आ गया बर्ड, रेप्टाइल एंड मैमल. फिर आ गया था अपना गिल यानी ब्रैंकियल रेस्पिरेशन में था आर्थ्रोपोड एक्वेटिक वाले और एक्वेटिक आर्थ्रोपोड्स और वो मोलस्क्स. फिर आ गया सबसे गवार लोग अपना जिसमें डिफ्यूजन वाला आ गया. तो उसमें आ गया स्पंजेस, नाइडेरियंस और प्लैटिहेल्मिंथेस और फ्री लिविंग राउंडवर्म्स बस. और तो अर्थवर्म हो गया मॉइस्ट क्यूटिकल और इंसेक्ट हो गया ट्रैकियल ट्यूब्स. ट्रैकियल रेस्पिरेशन, क्यूटेनियस रेस्पिरेशन, पल्मोनरी रेस्पिरेशन और लास्टली था ब्रैंकियल रेस्पिरेशन. इसके अलावा सिंपल डिफ्यूजन भी था और थोड़ा सा क्यूटिकल वाला भी दर्द उनको. Anyways, let's go ahead. The latter is the actual site of the CO2 and O2, यानी कंडक्टिंग जोन था एक, और एक था एक्सचेंज पार्ट पोर्शन. तो एक्सचेंज पोर्शन में होता है CO2 O2 का डिफ्यूजन between blood and atmospheric air. The conducting portion consists of nostril, pharynx, larynx, trachea and bronchi, while the exchanging portion consists of alveoli and the ducts. बस दो ही चीज, alveoli और उसका ducts exchanging में. Anyways, mechanism of breathing, not very tough, very easy. Mechanism of breathing. Breathing or pulmonary ventilation occurs in the two stages: inspiration, expiration. During inspiration, that is an active process. Air enters into the lung and from the atmosphere, and during expiration, passive process, air is out of the lungs. But both of lungs return to the original portion. Diagram relaxed. Anyway, respiratory volumes and capacities. The quantity of air the lungs receive, hold or expel is called capacity. Tidal वॉल्यूम हो गया 5500 मिलीलीटर. इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम हो गया 2.5 लीटर. एक्सपिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम हो गया 1000 से 1100. रेसिडुअल वॉल्यूम हो गया 1100 से 1200. इतना याद कर लिया जाए पहले. टाइडल वॉल्यूम हो गया 500. इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व हो गया 2500 से 3000. और एक्सपिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम हो गया 1000 से 1100. और टाइडल वॉल्यूम हो गया 1100 से 1200. इंस्पिरेटरी कैपेसिटी कुछ नहीं होता है, टाइडल वॉल्यूम प्लस इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम होता है. एक्सपायरेटरी कैपेसिटी होता है टाइडल वॉल्यूम प्लस रिजर्व वॉल्यूम. फिर आता है फंक्शनल रेसिडुअल वॉल्यूम. उसमें होता है रेसिडुअल वॉल्यूम प्लस एक्सपायरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम. फंक्शनल रेसिडुअल कैपेसिटी होता है वॉल्यूम ऑफ एयर दैट विल रिमेन इन द लंग्स आफ्टर नॉर्मल एक्सपिरेशन, जो कि है एक्सपिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम और रेसिडुअल वॉल्यूम. रेसिडुअल वॉल्यूम कभी नहीं निकल सकता. वाइटल कैपेसिटी वर्क्स वॉल्यूम ऑफ एयर अ पर्सन कैन ब्रीथ आफ्टर फोर्स्ड एक्सपिरेशन. तो वो हो गया ERV और IRV और TV. सब कुछ होगा, बस रेसिडुअल वॉल्यूम नहीं. और टोटल लंग कैपेसिटी में होता है वाइटल कैपेसिटी प्लस रेसिडुअल वॉल्यूम. ठीक है. टोटल लंग कैपेसिटी है तो 5.8 लीटर. इसको याद करना. फिर 5800 मिलीलीटर याद करना. ये याद होना चाहिए. ओके, इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम हो गया, एक्सपिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम भी हो गया. और क्या बच्चा? रेसिडुअल वॉल्यूम भी हो गया, इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम कैपेसिटी सब हो गया. टाइडल वॉल्यूम भी 500 मिलीलीटर. फंक्शनल रेसिडुअल वॉल्यूम कैपेसिटी हो गया ERV प्लस RV. और वाइटल कैपेसिटी हो गया जो मैक्स ले सकता है इंसान. मैक्स निकालने के बाद मैक्स लिया जा सकता है, उसको वाइटल कैपेसिटी कहते हैं. एनीवेज, आगे एक्सचेंज ऑफ गैसेस. द प्राइमरी साइट ऑफ द गैसेस एक्सचेंज इज alveoli. Gases exchange take place by simple diffusion, mainly based on the pressure gradient, concentration gradient. Solubility of gases and thickness of membrane affect the rate of diffusion. Pressure contributed by the individual gas in the mixture of gases is called partial pressure. The solubility of CO2 is 20 से 25 times higher than that of O2. Therefore, CO2 diffuses faster than the O2 across the diffusion membrane. Diffusion membrane less than 1 millimeter thick. Diffusion membrane is less than 1 millimeter thick. Is made up of 3 layers. Hence comes epithelium of the alveoli, endothelium, alveolar capillary, basement membrane. Solubility of CO2 is 20 से 25 times higher than that of O2. Therefore, CO2 diffuses faster than the O2. Solubility of gases and thickness of membranes affect the rate of diffusion. Solubility of gases and thickness of membrane affect the rate of diffusion. Pressure contributed by individual gases. The mixture of gases is called partial pressure. Solubility of CO2 is 20 to 25 times higher than that of O2. Therefore, CO2 diffuses faster than O2 across a fusion membrane. खैर आगे. Gases exchange occurs at the two levels, that is, between the alveoli and blood external respiration, and between blood and tissue level, blood and tissue cells. Between blood and alveoli, external respiration, and between blood and tissue cells, internal respiration. Exchange of gases between alveoli and blood. Alveoli deoxygenated blood. Alveoli में होता है high PO2, low PCO2. Deoxygenated blood में होता है low PO2, high PCO2. चालीस 95 104 और CO2 का हो गया 40 45 इसका हो गया 195 ऑक्सीजनेटेड ब्लड में और 104 हो गया एल्वेलाई में O2 का 95 104 और 40 CO2 का 40 45 95 104 40 anyways आगे transport of the gases. Blood carries oxygen from the lungs to the tissue cells for oxidation and CO2 from the tissue cells to the respiratory surface for elimination. CO2 from tissue to respiratory surface for elimination. Blood is the medium of transport for O2 and CO2. Transport of oxygen. 97% of O2 is transported by as oxyhemoglobin by RBCs in the blood. Remaining 3% of the oxygen is carried in a dissolved state through plasma. Remaining 3% of the oxygen is carried in a dissolved state through the plasma. Remaining 3% of the O2 is carried in a dissolved state to plasma. The percentage of hemoglobin that is bound to O2 is called percentage saturation of hemoglobin. Relationship between percentage saturation of hemoglobin in blood and oxygen tension is called oxygen dissociation curve. This curve is always sigmoid in shape. In alveoli, high PO2, low PCO2, less H plus, and low temperature favor the formation of oxyhemoglobin, यानी shift towards right. ज़्यादा ऑक्सीजन कम PCO2 कम H प्लस यानी एसिड बेसिक लो टेम्परेचर ज़्यादा ऑक्सीजन कम CO2 राइट. और इसका उल्टा होगा तो लेफ्ट. एसिडिक होगा तो लेफ्ट, ज़्यादा टेम्परेचर होगा तो लेफ्ट, तेज तीखा एसिडिक जानलेवा चीज़ होगा तो लेफ्ट, और कोमा मिठाई प्यारा कोमल सॉफ्ट चीज़ होगा तो राइट साइड. हाई O2 है, लेस H प्लस है यानी बेसिक, लो टेम्परेचर यानी ठंडा कूल तो राइट. In tissues, reverse of the above condition favor the dissociation of O2 from the oxyhemoglobin यानी लेफ्ट चल जाता है टिश्यू के अंदर ऑफ कोर्स, क्योंकि तभी तो डिसोसिएशन कर लेफ्ट जाएगा और डिसोसिएशन ज़्यादा हो जाएगा. Every 100 ml of oxygenated blood deliver about 5 ml of O2 under normal condition. Every 100 ml of the blood. यार ये 15 ग्राम वाला डेटा क्यों नहीं दिया हुआ इसमें? फिर एनसीईआरटी खोलो यार, दे ही देता तो क्या जाता. CO2 is transported from the tissue to blood mainly as bicarbonate. CO2 is transported from the tissue to blood mainly as bicarbonate. In the plasma and erythrocytes about 70%. Partly as carbohemoglobin which is found in the RBC formation by the CO2 and reduced hemoglobin by 25-20%, and 7% is in the tissue plasma. High PCO2 and low PO2 favors the binding of CO2 to hemoglobin, while the low PCO2 and high O2 in the oxygen favors dissociation of CO2 from carbonymohemoglobin. These reactions are favored by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic anhydrase breaks into HCO3 minus NH plus. The bicarbonates diffuse into the blood plasma along with the concentration gradient. During transport of CO2, exit of bicarbonate ions considerably changes ionic balance between the plasma and the erythrocytes. During transport of the CO2, exit of bicarbonate ions considerably changes ionic balance between the plasma and erythrocytes, यानी RBC और प्लाज्मा के बीच का change. To restore the ionic balance, chloride ions diffuse through the plasma into the RBC. This movement of chloride ions is known as the chloride shift or the Hamburger's phenomena. Anyways, every 100 ml of deoxygenated blood delivers about 4 ml. गलत लिखा है, 4 ml होगा. ml होगा, थोड़ा सा मिस्टेक है. Anyways, आगे 4 ml of CO2 into the alveoli. 15 ग्राम वाला लगता है सर्कुलेशन में आता है. आगे चलते हैं. रेगुलेशन ऑफ रेस्पिरेशन. द प्रोसेस ऑफ रेस्पिरेशन इज अंडर बोथ नर्वस एंड केमिकल कंट्रोल्स. Neural regulation. The group of neurons located in the medulla oblongata and pons feruli acts as the respiratory center, which is composed of groups of neurons. Hence, respiratory center is divided into medullary respiratory center and pons respiratory center. Neuroregulation. The group of neurons located into the medulla oblongata and pons feruli. The group of neurons located in the medulla oblongata and pons feruli acts as the respiratory center, which is composed of the groups of neurons. Hence, respiratory center is divided into medullary respiratory center and pons respiratory center. Hence, respiratory center is divided into medullary respiratory center and pons respiratory center. Medullary respiratory center में होगा dorsal respiratory group और ventral respiratory group. Dorsal respiratory group causes inspiration located in the dorsal portion of the medulla. Ventral respiration causes expiration located in the ventrolateral portion of the medulla. pons respiratory center में भी दो पार्ट होते हैं, pneumotaxic center and apneustic center. Pneumotaxic center function to limit inspiration located in the dorsal part of the pons feruli, or apneustic center controls the depth of inspiration. Function to limit inspiration, pneumotaxic. Agnobasin control the depth of inspiration located in the lower part of the pons feruli. Chemical regulation. It affects the co-effect of CO2, O2 and H plus in the blood. Its receptors are located in the carotid bodies, largest number. Aortic bodies in the brain. Carotid bodies and aortic bodies are the peripheral chemoreceptors, whereas these located in the brain are called central chemoreceptors. Chemoreceptor के central peripheral. Peripheral is stimulated by decreased PO2. Central chemoreceptor is stimulated by increased PO2 in the brain, and peripheral is increased H plus concentration के कारण. भाई साहब ये रेगुलेशन तो समझना पड़ेगा. Anyways, एक बार CO2 वाला फिर से पढ़ते हैं. CO2 is transported from the tissues to blood mainly as bicarbonate in plasma erythrocyte. Bicarbonate in plasma erythrocyte हो गया 70%. Carbonymohemoglobin which is RBC reduced hemoglobin बहुत 20 से 25%, और सिंपली प्लाज्मा डिजोल्व स्टेट में 7%. 20 से 25 में हो गया अपना कार्बोनीमोहीमोग्लोबिन, 7% हो गया प्लाज्मा में डिजॉल्व स्टेट में, और फिर हो गया प्लाज्मा आरबीसी में बाइकार्बोनेट में 70%, मेनली बाइकार्बोनेट. High PCO2 and low PO2 as in tissue favors the being of CO2 with hemoglobin, while low PCO2 and high O2 in alveoli favors the dissociation of CO2 from carbon hemoglobin. This is favored by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic acid breaks into HCO3 minus and H plus. The bicarbonates diffuse into the blood plasma along with the concentration gradient, during transport of CO2 extract of the bicarbonate ions considerably. Carbonic acid breaks into HCO3 minus and H plus. The bicarbonates diffuse into the blood plasma between the plasma and erythrocytes. During transport of CO2 exit of bicarbonate ions considerably changes the ionic balance between the plasma and erythrocytes. To restore the ionic balance, chlorine and diffuse from the plasma into erythrocyte. RBC के अंदर क्लोरीन घुसता है. This movement is called chlorine ion यानी chloride shift or Hamburger phenomena. Every 100 ml of oxygen blood conveys 4 milliliter of CO2 to alveoli. 95 104 40 40 45 45. CO2 H2O से बनता है H2CO3 और फिर उससे बनता है HCO3 माइनस और H प्लस. Regulation of respiration, process of respiration both under nervous and chemical control. Neural regulation, the group of neurons located in the middle oblongata and pons villi acts as the respiratory center, which is composed of groups of neurons. Hence, respiratory center is divided into medullary respiratory center and pons respiratory center. Medullary respiratory center and pons respiratory center. Medullary respiratory center, pons respiratory center. Medullary respiratory center, dorsal respiratory group, ventral group. डॉर्सल कराता है इंस्पिरेशन, वेंट्रल कराता है एक्सपिरेशन. पॉन्स रेस्पिरेटरी सेंटर, न्यूमोटैक्सिक सेंटर और एपनियोस्टिक सेंटर. न्यूमोटैक्सिक सेंटर फंक्शन लिमिटेड टू द इंस्पिरेशन, लिमिट करा देता है, जल्दी करा देता है इंस्पिरेशन को, लिमिट करा देता है इंस्पिरेशन को. और एपनियोस्टिक कराता क्या है, कंट्रोल द डेप्थ ऑफ इंस्पिरेशन. तो पॉन्स सिर्फ इंस्पिरेशन से में लेना देना है, और मेडुला का डॉर्सल वाले का इंस्पिरेशन से और वेंट्रल वाले का एक्सपिरेशन से. और पॉन्स में न्यूमोटैक्सिक का हो गया लिमिट इंस्पिरेशन, और एपनियोस्टिक का हो गया शैलो डेप्थ ब्रेथ इंस्पिरेशन. Chemical regulation includes the effect of CO2, O2 and H plus body concentration in the blood. Its receptor is located in the carotid body's largest number, aortic bodies and in brain. Carotid body, aortic body and brain. Carotid body and aortic body are the peripheral chemoreceptors. Carotid body and aortic body are the peripheral chemoreceptors, whereas these located in the brain are called central chemoreceptors. ब्रेन में हो गया सेंट्रल और पेरिफेरल में आ गया आउटेड कैरोटिड. ओहो, wheezing sound of the asthma, difficulty in breathing, wheezing sound due to inflammation of bronchi and bronchioles, emphysema, decreased respiratory sulfur due to damaged alveolar walls, mainly caused due to cigarette smoking, occupational respiratory disorder, mainly caused due to lung exposure due to grounding or stone breaking, inflammation leading to fibrosis of the lung, inflammation leading to fibrosis of lung. Protective marks can reduce the risk. Anyways, asthma, emphysema, asthma, difficulty in breathing. Emphysema, bronchia, decreased respiratory sulfur due to damage of alveolar walls.